So today we'll be going through Genesis chapter 21. And Genesis chapter 21 literally begins, with a long-awaited birth of the son that God had promised to Abraham and Sarah. This is the child through whom God would make of Abraham a great nation, as he did promise in Genesis chapter 17, verses 6 to 7. God said the name of their son would be laughter, or Isaac, which literally means, Isaac literally means laughter. And he did say that in Genesis chapter 17, verses 19, because, they both laughed in Genesis 17:7 and Genesis 18:12. That is, 17:17, that was Abraham that laughed. 18:12, that was Sarah that laughed. So now the time has come. The long-awaited son. I mean, whoa. Abraham is about 100 years old now, and Sarah is 90 years old. Boy, the guy has been waiting for what? Almost 80 years. 80 plus, actually 85 years. The promise of him having that son came when he was about 75 years old. Slightly lower than that, but you could say 25 when the Lord promised. But I mean, he had been almost 80 plus years without having a child of his own through his official wife, Sarai. Later on, he got a kid, that is Ishmael, through Hagar. We studied that in earlier episodes. If you have missed them out, please pick them up on our YouTube channel or on our website by simply scanning the QR code that you see on your screen. So Jesus visited Sarah. She and Abraham conceived, just as God had said, just as he had promised in Genesis chapter 18, verses 14. At the ages of 190 respectively, Abraham and Sarah became parents. Sarah bears Abraham a son full of joy. You can imagine the kind of joy they had then, waiting for 80 plus years. Man, I could just imagine, and would love to just rejoice with Abraham at this point. Abraham and Sarah, of course, full of joy. He was brought up, this young man, Isaac, that has been, born unto those two. He's brought so much joy to Sarah. We'll start about that joy, ahead of time in a bit. That is verses 1 to 7, this very chapter today of 21. So that joy eventually will sour, and it becomes a bit of sour. We'll study that in a bit. Though Isaac, that is after Isaac had been weaned. Sarah sees Abraham's son, that is through Hagar. Hagar is the maiden servant that was gotten from Egypt at the time when there was a hunger, and he lied about. That is chapter 12. Please pick it up. So at a later stage, I think it was about 17 or 16, when Sarah had sort of lost hope. She did suggest that Abraham should have a relation with Hagar, that they may have a son. That boy was then later on called Ishmael. So Sarah sees, Ishmael laughing on the day that they were rejoicing. It was a big party where Isaac had been weaned. And so from afar, she sort of sees this young man, laughing. Probably she was. The young man was with the mom, Hagar. So she seems, that is Sarah, she seems to think this is more of a directed insult towards Isaac. Now, though Sarah, furiously demands that Abraham cast Hagar and Ishmael out of their home into the wilderness to eliminate any possibility that Hagar's son, that is Ishmael, will share the inheritance with Isaac. In Genesis 21, that is verses 8 to 10, we'll see that in a bit. Abraham got a bit displeased about this. He really didn't like the way, Sarah reacted towards the incidents. He did not like how Sarah demanded, and that's because, Abraham had been attached to Ishmael at this point. And I mean, for a very long time, he probably thought he wasn't going to get the Isaac that he had been promised to. Anyways, the Lord, however, speaks to Abraham and he assures him that, Ishmael is going to be fine, that he's going to make a great nation. So he tells him uh, you know, to listen, you know, to listen and sort of obey Sarah's voice. We'll study a bit that in a bit in verses 11 to 13. Abraham did obey, the wife, and he sent his slave wife and, her son into the wilderness with some bread and water. They soon ran out of water, and Hagar put her son under the shade of a bush to die. It was a very heartbreaking incident. We'll read about that in a bit. The angel calls to her from heaven, and we are talking about the angel of the Lord. Whenever you see the angel of the Lord, it's usually a reference to Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. And then he says that God has heard Ishmael's voice and that he will make Ishmael a great nation. Water was then provided. Hagar and Ishmael, they did survive, fortunately. Ishmael grew up, into the wilderness. He became a great archer, and eventually he married an Egyptian woman. We'll see that in Genesis, this very Genesis 21, that is in verses 14 to 21. Then Abimelech, the king of Gerar, whom we read about in the prior chapter, he again came and he approached Abraham. In spite of the fact that Abraham's deception about Sarah being his wife nearly led to Abimelech's death, the king has noticed at this point that Abraham is indeed blessed and that God is actually with him. So previously, Abimelech, he had given Abraham animals, servants, silver, and the land Abraham has, that he is currently being occupying. So now Abimelech would like to formalize their relationship, their alliance. In doing so, he wants to give Abraham a permanent home in his region and sort of becoming official allies. We'll study about that in 22 to 24. That is verses 22 to 24. Abraham, of course, he did agree. He did not refuse Abimelech's request, and he did swear not to deceive him again, whoever, or of his offsprings ever again, and not to deal and to deal sort of kindly with him, and of course Abimelech's people. Abraham, of course, then he insisted on including on the agreement he was going to make with Abimelech the resolution of the ownership of a disputed well, and to kind of that Abraham believes, or he did, dig by himself. He dug this well, and then the people of Abimelech went and snatched it away from him, sort of forcefully. So now he uses this opportunity. He takes advantage of the fact that Abimelech wants to, make allies with him, and sort of he demands back that which was his. So after they both swore, their oaths to bind, the agreement, the place where they met is called Beersheba, which literally means the well of seven, well of seven. Or you could also say the well of the oath. It sort of became an important place in Israel's history. We'll start a bit of that in verses 31 to 34. So, as Genesis, concludes, comes to the end, that is chapter 21, Isaac has been born. Abraham owns a well in Canaan. The promises of God to make of him a great nation and to give him possession, of the entire land have sort of begun to come true. He sort of now starts seeing a little bit of light towards that which God had promised him. He becomes more confident, and he becomes more, his faith grows deeper into the relationship with God. That's a bit of the summary of Genesis chapter 21, as we are going to be looking in detail today.